Hey, do you like Spider-Man? Well, boy, do I got the game for you. Following two absolute bangers, there has been a third to come out. Almost 2 years ago exactly, the holy grail of Spider-Man games came out, to critical acclaim, and may I say, this lived up to every single notion of hype I had about this game. I picked this game up and within 3 days had this 100% completed. Now when I tell you I love these games, I mean it. I have 100%ed the previous two, and the only reason I hadn't played this sooner is because of the biggest downsides of these games. They're PS4 exclusives, and my piece of shit glowy box decided to commit suicide, and I've been too lazy to get another one. So when I saw this shit on Steam, I knew it was time. Time to put on the mask and swing into perfection. Of course, it wouldn't be perfect without good. There are so many aspects of gameplay, it just makes me feel so good. Not in a weird way, I'm just excited, alright? It takes almost everything good from the previous games and mashes it all together surprisingly fluidly. There are so many aspects that it can be very easy to make it overwhelming, but the developers implement these aspects in a very fluid way, to where you are not bombarded by too many things at once when starting out. But also, more importantly, introducing these mechanics on top of each other. What I mean by that is there are so many different things happening at once, but they aren't overlapping, so it's not like super complex. Like, you had two games with two different characters, and these characters play very differently in their own respective games. But they made up for the difference by introducing new things to Peter, allowing his playstyle to line up with Miles pretty well. However, something that I didn't think they can improve on, and they definitely did, was the swinging. Of course I was wrong about this, because I don't know how, but they made my favorite parts of these games even better. The upgrades that they introduced feel amazing, and they are so fun to just kind of fuck with when you're zooming. I mentioned earlier that they gave Peter some more depth to keep up with Miles. And this is an example, as Miles in his game had Venom abilities, which allowed him to get an extra boost occasionally when swinging through New York. Peter also gets a version of this with his Iron Spider upgrades. And I just enjoy that they keep adding things to the games they make, which, saying out loud, sounds dumb, but there are so many sequels that fall flat in this aspect because they don't have a good mix of reoccurring mechanics that mesh well with the new ones. Speaking of new mechanics, however, they added web wings, and they are so damn fun. I feel they implemented these perfectly, as it works so well with the Venom boosts you get with the normal swing, and I enjoy the little wind tunnels around the map. It kind of just allows you to fly around the city at like Mach 5. I kind of feel you needed something like this because of the map upgrade. They increased the size of New York, but had a huge space of water separating the two sides of the map. It would have been such a pain in the ass to just swing across the bridge every time you wanted to go across. I would just like to add, it feels so smooth mixing normal swings with the gliding, it just makes you feel like Spider-Man. And you know what Spider-Man does best? Beating the living shit out of random crooks. The combat in this game is fucking amazing. But you didn't really need me to tell you that. These games take heavy inspiration from the Arkham Batman games, and boy, do they just add stuff to the combat to make it so much better. Though the Arkham games had amazing combat, even the first one has aged so well. But what Spider-Man does best is making that shit even better. Spider-Man takes this combat and makes it three-dimensional, as you can throw enemies all over the place, in the air, to the ground, off a fucking building. It's always just amazing to try to keep an enemy in the air as long as possible, so you can sufficiently beat their ass. Another point where the combat thrives is the gadgets and several different unique utilities you have at your disposal. You have so many different gadgets you can use to spice things up a little bit, and they are so useful, and I don't see one that I didn't use when playing the game, looking back on it. The first Spider-Man had gadgets, of course, however they cut down on the amount in the most recent entry. The original had a total of 8 web gadgets, however in the new Spider-Man 2, you only have 4. I actually like this change, as when you're saucing up motherfuckers, you don't have to stop to choose which option you want. They're just binded so well you can almost reactionarily send out gadgets. The gadgets are not the only thing you can use to spectacularly fuck up criminals on the street. Miles and Peter both have 4 special abilities. It differs from each character, Miles having his electric powers and Peter having his symbiote powers. I think these are a very good addition to the combat, and I know that Miles had it in his own game. However, I think it was more of a variety in this one, and I like how the powers you unlock get better as you progress through the story. All of these things together flow so well that you don't even really think about the combat. You kind of just get lost in a rhythmic dance. You don't always need to go in guns blazing, however. There is an alternative in some cases. You can channel a little bit of your Dark Knight energy and sneak around, and just slowly pick off those fuckers and squad wipe. The stealth in this game is probably one of the only things that isn't too different from the previous entries. They added one thing that is one of my favorite things to be added, actually. Instead of kind of just zipping around to eliminate enemies, you can now create like web lines, so you can creep above someone no matter where they are. This makes stealth on rooftops a lot more fun, as you can actually stay hidden and you don't have to just go in and fight. So they added one thing, but I also think there's something they took away that is overall for the worst. I know I said I liked the lack of gadgets from the previous games for combat. However, I think in stealth, it suffers the most. A lot of those gadgets they got rid of were for stealth, and it added a lot more depth, and taking those gadgets out has made the stealth a lot more basic. Now the only way you can take someone out is a web strike or a perch takedown. I mean, it's fine, but I do miss placing gadgets around to make the whole stealth a little bit more effective. But I cannot mention stealth without talking about the stupid ass Mary Jane sections. These are the worst parts of the other games, and I actually hate how they brought them back. It just takes you out of the story a bit, and it doesn't really add anything but annoyance. I understand why they're here for story purposes, but I don't know if I'm alone here, but these have always been my least favorite parts of these games. I also feel as if it is very out of place to have a third-person shooter segment at the end of the story, and it just kind of feels weird, you know? If they took these missions out, I don't think a whole lot of people would be too upset, but something that I am for sure not upset about is the Go figure. The third entry in a very successful series knows how to continue doing things well. The progression in this game is nothing too special, however, it is satisfying nonetheless. You have the basics here. You got a skill tree and some upgrades to your gadgets and other knickknacks. The one thing that stands out in this aspect, however, is the abilities you gain throughout the story. It flows very fluidly, not only from a gameplay perspective, but also a story one. Every major upgrade that you unlock makes sense throughout the story and is integrated well, so it doesn't seem too forced. This is very nice, as it seems to have a lot more thought put into it, so you can feel the characters get stronger and feel the advantages that these upgrades give you. Like at the end of the game, you can go face enemies you came across at the beginning, and you can 100% feel the difference. I know this is nothing new at all when it comes to basic game design, but I feel it makes sense in the scheme of the story, and I think it flows very well. Another thing I'm glad that they did was keep all the upgrades you gathered from the previous games. Take swinging, for example. The skill tree you unlocked during the earlier games are there in the base non-upgraded characters. You do not have to re-unlock cool shit you spent time unlocking earlier in the series. This also means the unlocks you get in the game are all new ideas and mechanics that just feel good. You can really feel the care and creativity that Insomniac has towards the series. One thing I think they do really well is the skill tree and other upgrades. To unlock all the upgrades, you have to get certain coins and tech parts. I like how simple it is, and something I really enjoy is that these coins are used to unlock literally everything. Will you spend your coins and get a new suit, so that way you can be swagged out? Or will you use it to upgrade your equipment, so that way you can sufficiently bully people? The way you gather these are very natural, as the coins can be gained by doing certain side missions or collecting certain items around the map. And you can just play around to get these naturally, or go around and do certain quests to get your specific ones. These can be used on all upgrades besides the base skill trees. You have to upgrade those by gaining levels, and you get plenty throughout the story mode, so you don't have to go around and grind some missions to actually be able to finish the story. However, if you did get tired of the story mode, there are plenty of other things you can do. The side missions are a very fun thing to go around and do, right? Whether it be finding Sandman rocks or fucking up some symbiotes, but where the side missions really go hard are the little offshoots of the story. You have reoccurring characters from previous games, and they are really entertaining. There's one of the side missions that really stood out to me, and that would be the Flame Cult storyline. You team up with Yuri, which is a character from the first Spider-Man game, and what they did was very interesting. The leader of this cult is a man that killed one of Yuri's fellow officers in that game, and in an act of revenge, she dresses up as a vigilante to try to find the man that killed him. This switch from a rule-abiding cop to someone whose entire mission is to take down this cult-killing leader in the process is so fun. This gives off an interesting dynamic where Peter is trying to take down the cult alongside Yuri, as well as preventing Yuri from killing the man they are both trying to stop. This eventually leads Peter and Yuri to have a pretty cool boss fight before the final mission in the side adventure. The ending of this mission also sets up Carnage in the sequel, and honestly, I'm pretty hyped about it. I think it leaves it pretty open for something interesting in the future, but you might want something a little more chill. If that's the case, you have the Spidey app, and those missions are a whole lot shorter and are just mostly fun. I like how you get to interact with people around New York, and it really makes you feel like a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. It doesn't matter how small the problem is, you are still going to try your best to help, and I think that encapsulates Spider-Man to a T. There are, of course, more of these side objectives, but I'm not going to go into detail about all of them. The only thing I would say would be, I wish there were more things to do on the side. It only took me a couple hours to finish what was left in New York, but I would honestly rather have quality over quantity any day. But of course, you need to get something for completing these things. So, how are the collectibles? In classic fashion, the collectibles, at least in my opinion, are great. Of course, when completing certain things, you get a suit as a reward. Some look cool, and some don't. But hey, I really like it nonetheless. The other collectibles are something I wish more games did. You get something physical, whether it be a rock or a spider bot, but you get story behind it. Take the Sandman rocks, for example. I mean, yeah, they look cool, but they are also fragments of Sandman's scattered memories. Collecting these slowly paints the full picture of events that took place before the start of the game. It adds more value to the collectibles and the story itself. But sometimes you just want something simple. Something that just looks cool, and that's where the spider bots come in. Of course, it leads to something later on, but I won't spoil it because it was very fun. These are located throughout the city, and they are all references to past Spider-Man comics and games. I love collecting these to see what the next one is, and what Peter has to say about it. I find it funny that he comments on almost all of them, whether it be confusion, excitement, or intrigue. Again, this adds something so small that gives it such a nice touch. Something that isn't small, however, is the story of these games are always a banger, and this one is no exception. Now before we get into it, there will be spoilers from the main story mode, so you have been warned. I do think the story is very well paced, bouncing between Peter and Miles. There is a lot more to do with Peter in this one, however Miles is sprinkled out throughout. The start of the game is perfect. You have a high-octane fight between the two Spider Boys and Sandman. And boy, does the Arkham inspiration really come through on this one. This happens several times throughout the story, but you get to fight alongside the other Spider-Man and get to do some crazy combos, and it is so goddamn satisfying. This is something that is a huge improvement from the older games, as you get to switch between the characters and the fights throughout the story mode. As the story goes, however, we shall start off with the OG. Peter is kind of at a transitional period, losing Aunt May and his previous job. I really like the first interaction he has with Miles, being his teacher and them having to come up with an excuse to both leave at the same time. These kinds of interactions are always so fun, but it's not too frequent. As far as characters go, though, we see Harry Osborn, who was set up from the previous game, and I actually love this character. You can actually see the friendship between the two of them, and they avoided one of the biggest superhero tropes ever. Harry finds out that Peter is Spider-Man and doesn't get pissed off. This actually makes fucking sense, and I'm glad they didn't make unnecessary conflict between the two. It makes the conflict later in the story hit harder, and in my opinion, it's actually very sad to see Peter descend into the symbiote, as he was also trying to save Harry. I have always loved the way the symbiote fucks with Peter's mind, and they do it very well here, and having another Spider-Man gives a very fun boss fight between Miles and Peter. Overall, there isn't really a whole lot of character development. There are a couple changes that happen, such as MJ moving in with Peter, but I really don't think it was anything crazy. I guess the only person you can say went through development would be Miles. Miles is trying to move on with his life after high school, but he keeps putting Spider-Man responsibilities above his own. It is very nice to see a younger Spider-Man in these games to contrast with the older and more mature Spider-Man who kinda has things sorted out a little bit. I enjoy seeing a Spidey that is still trying to find a good balance between his goals as Spider-Man and his goals as a person outside of the mantle. I think Miles got most of the love when it came to developing a character, and I think that's perfect, as we have an older Peter that has already lived through most of his big hardships. The big thing that Miles has to deal with in this game is coming in contact with Mr. Negative. He has to be a good Spider-Man whilst dealing with the thoughts of revenge over his father. I think it feels very natural when they have to work with Negative to save Peter and eventually the city. The redemption of Mr. Negative is very understandable actually, and it doesn't feel super cheap. I also think the inclusion of Mr. Negative's powers was a really cool way to get into characters' minds and uncover the deeper psyche, and I wish it was used more often, honestly. I think it gives a good mix of gameplay and story at the same time. Overall, I didn't think the story was too bad, but it didn't really blow my socks off either. What did blow my socks off, however, are the villains. The Venom villain, once formed, was a really fun and exciting fight. I enjoyed that you get to take control of Venom once he turns to show how powerful that character really is. The power isn't the only thing that is captivating, however. I think Harry becoming Venom works very well as he has a closer relationship with Peter, and introducing a new character like Eddie Brock wouldn't flow as well as Harry would. I think this was a top tier villain, and I don't think I can say the same about Kraven. I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I really don't think Kraven's plan makes a whole lot of sense. He supposedly lives for the hunt, so it doesn't make a lick of sense to send his lackeys to capture his prey. I would think the hunt would be part of tracking them down and killing them, rather than making your little minions capture them and then killing them after being captured. It just seems weird that he wants a hunt that can give him a challenge, or straight up kill him, but make sure the hunt is on his rules. It is just very odd. That and the whole Mr. Negative arena thing also feels really weird. Like you're telling me that you captured all these villains and you just want to watch them kill each other? That seems more alongside of what the Jonkler would do, not someone who believes that the thrill of the hunt should surpass everything else. Again, I don't know if I'm just a fucking idiot or not, but this shit doesn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. Outside of those things though, the boss fights do go crazy hard and are very challenging at times. I do enjoy the cameos of other symbiotes and the hint of Carnage in the sequel. I am interested and excited to see where the game is going, and I just can't wait. Let's hope to another fun game. Thank y'all for watching. I do appreciate y'all tuning in. I don't really have a lot to say at the end of this, outside of if you want to see me play these games live, I do have a Twitch channel. It will be in the description. So if you would like to come hang out, please do. I do stream quite frequently, so just come and say hi. It would make my day, and I hope it can make yours. But that is it, and I hope y'all have a good day, evening, night, whatever. So yeah, goodbye.